Here we are in the toilet, the compost toilet, and I'm putting in a sink unit. Give more stability to these uprights, which are holding the crown. But in fact, they're really quite solid already. But the more structural work, the more solid everything becomes. So I found this old sink unit. Can't remember where. Probably down in the dry river beds. And I'm just doing a little bit of chiseling off here to get this to fit. Yeah, well, I realise I've done a very, very interesting error in I took off the wrong part of the wood that's supposed to slot inside there. Well, I'm not going to worry about it now. I wonder of this path before me. I wonder of these muddy footprints, as if to say, you're not alone. I wonder of even the river and the streams, how unerringly they find their own way, as if they have no alternative but to follow the laws. But not so for the hero who breaks the bounds of culture. Would I rather be an errant stream cutting its way into the land, devouring the earth and pushing aside a clefted opening for its own desirous way? Or am I a falling star with no alternative but to burn up in the atmosphere? I'm reaching now almost the head of that vision in which slowly the sea grinds at my feet. And there surely I am, an old man, wondering why have I detached myself from the great almighty earth to wonder of my own achievements. Was that my life, to be so rebellious, to push the extremes of my consciousness so that I can say I am distinct and have made my own way? Yes, I'm approaching now a vision of my life, as if it was grown from the chaos itself, protruding up like a sword from its side. I am the peaty moss, and I am the grass, and I am the head of the land. So here we have the piece of wood, and by using the offcut to this section to extend out from the chiseled area, I effectively maintain the strength of the length of it and secure in place. I don't know if you can see that. Nicely grooves inside there, and that will be screwed to either side, and that will secure in place the sink for anyone who thinks they can climb on top of it to get to the top. I mean, certainly in Nepal I'd be wary of monkeys, but anyhow, it's just this idea of structural integrity, and the more things you can attach to the whole structure, the stronger it will be. So just an array of green woodworking tools, and this is my wood. I'm going to make some pegs. Now I'm going to make pegs of this diameter. So I've just been sharpening this. I'm not a professional. I have quite little experience, but I've had to put that onto a grinder to get it as good as new, which is like this one here, for instance. These augers are fantastic. They can go through most wood, but they are designed for green wood, which is why we call it green woodworking. And there's a variety of sizes here. Now, when I make pegs, I make them of 2 sizes. So this is the equipment I'm using. As you can see, it the hole widens at the end here, so you can put in a larger piece of wood. And as you turn it through, it comes out your size, the size that you've actually asked for it. And you can adjust the blade by these 2 screws here. So I have 2 size holes, and there's the other one, for 2 size pegs. And this is what we call a throw. This is a splitting tool, so you basically when the handle's attached to it, if I can get it out and show you, there's a blade on there, so that when that sticks in the wood like so, you smack it down with a heavy wooden mallet and it splits the wood for you. And you are obviously holding it by the handle, which is protruding out from there, so it's like an L-shaped tool. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so the idea is I'm going to make pegs from this, and you can see a branch stub there, so I don't want that. That's not going to go through my plane, my whole plane. So I'm going to cut this section off here, and then I'm going to have this amount of wood here available, probably up to the curvature here, to be able to plane down to size, and I can cut maybe 2 or 3 different pegs from it. There we are. So I can bring that round, I'll give you an idea. That's the hole, the enlarged end that the wood needs to fit into, and that's the end dimension that the wood's going to end up being. And in fact, it doesn't fit in there yet because it's just a little bit too big. So what I'm going to do is just side axe a little bit off there. I've got left and right-handed side axes because I'm double-handed, and it's always good to have two around, especially when you're working in difficult spots. And there we have it. Let's try and get that into the hole plane. Now, I've been messing around with this orientation of the blade a little bit, and because it wasn't cutting so well, and I realised I had the orientation wrong. And this is where volunteering really comes into effect, because when you go and you meet somebody who's much better than you, who's got loads of years of experience and all the correct tools in front of you, then that's your best mentor, you know. I mean, you can learn a lot just doing stuff by yourself and trial and error, but when that person comes along and says, okay, let me adjust that blade for a little, and then you see why it's cutting 200% better than it was before, and then you can look at that blade and say, actually, that blade needs sharpening. All of these tools will need sharpening at some stage, but I haven't really overused any of them since I bought them quite a long time ago. But as I say, there are plenty of green woodworkers around the country, and they will also introduce you to a variety of woods, different types of woods. So there's an example where my blade settings may be wrong. Now the thing about green woodworking, it's for green wood. Yeah, so that's why you got green wood for green saws, and you've got seasoned wood for seasoned saws. So there's an example of the size of my peg, but I've already come up against a knoll, and I'm going to have to chop that out. So I'm going back over to the side axe, and I'm just going to look at a couple of places to ensure that I can get this all the way through and finish off the job over there. Problem I've got here is the wood is too seasoned and it's not designed for seasoned wood. You've got to cut these pegs within 6 months of cutting the wood. So I will endeavour and see what I can do. So I believe I'm correct in saying that the wood is too hard. If this was green wood, and maybe I can find a piece to show you later, it will peel like an orange or an apple. This hardened bark is actually almost blunting the blades. But once you get underneath that bark, it actually begins to cut the wood underneath it quite well. So I think I've got the settings correct. This was originally going to be a post, but it's so rotten that it's doubled up perfectly as a seat. And I have my parties here. This is a little spot they use to get some shade from the tree. Well, I think I'm going to stop there because I've got one good stake. I'm going to cut it here and then see what the rest of the day brings me. Again from Algarrobe. And remember, if I'm doing something that you really want to get into and you're not doing anything about it, you've got to ask yourself some simple questions why you can't get the motivation up to make that request. So what I'm going to talk about today and an attempt is to put in some wooden pegs, and I'm using oak wood going into pine wood, and pine wood is really trash. This type of pine is trash, but I've treated it and I expect to get maybe a few years out of it, not much. Over the last few days I've been putting in the last uprights and bridging everything for eventually some sort of roof I'm going to build, and it's just looking like some strange funky project. So I'm pegging only in essential areas. Don't peg everything up. I mean there's going to be natural movement, shifting, but also stuff is going to rot and it's going to have to be replaced in the future. So I'm just essentially pegging to reinforce what's already there and adding extra wood where that also can reinforce. So here we go. I'm going to show you what I've done here. I've put in this horizontal beam, as you can see. It goes quite thin towards the end. Now I'm going to explain something here. This horizontal beam is actually giving some extra support to the cross section over here that runs between the two posts, and it's giving extra support because it's actually underneath it. Now I don't need to peg that together. All I need to ensure is that it doesn't move, and the way I'm going to do that is pegging the end right here. Now I haven't got much wood to play with because that was the lengths I had, and if there was any longer pieces of wood, they were beginning to rot, so I just used what's good, and I'm going to peg this piece to this. Now all I'm going to do, I'm not going to go all the way through the trunk. I'm just going to go part way through to stop it from rolling or moving in the wind. And here we can get a clearer view of that same section of wood going up towards the other post. Now it gets so thin up there and it began to rot that I was worried it would just the weight of it would just eventually collapse it. So what I'm going to do is peg this section here, this extra perpendicular which I've got there, joining up the two horizontals in between, so this piece and the one I've just been referring to here, and the pegs would go as such to ensure that there's support in the middle of those horizontals. Here again we can have a proper look at this end. By pegging them, it was in two places. Pegging up posts in two places will actually stop the bottom from sliding or moving as well. And here's an example where stuff doesn't need to be pegged, because the crux of that post there is actually being used quite effectively to jam in that horizontal section, which is pretty much level all the way across, and then meets up with a variety of wood that's going on there. And the posts are in solid, they're in sort of 3-foot pits, rammed home with stone for drainage, so they're not moving, and we've just had some heavy winds and I didn't see an inch of movement in any of those. So it's really quite unimaginable that such a structure could come down, but we do get serious winds where it wouldn't be just this coming down, it would probably be the caravans and the carob trees and the olive trees all losing branches of one sort or another. So here's a peg. I'm just going to offer it up to see what size I need to cut off it. Most of it. Yeah, it's something I learned very recently actually. With soft wood like that pine, some of it's rotten. So when I put an auger through it, it actually takes out a lot more wood than I want. It's not a clean cut. And the idea will be then to go down to a smaller size and then try and ram this in, and I've done that in one of the holes over there. It should jam itself in there really, because it's kinked. Hey? Nature never invented things to be straight. So I'll ram that in, and then hopefully what's going to happen is that the greener wood, well, it would have been greener had I done this before, would actually contract around it and tighten on it. Sorry about all the sexual innuendo, but you know, this is exactly how man evolved. Find that hole. I've beaten about the bush. It's not actually going all the way through, so I'm not interested. That's it, you go get them. Trying to figure out what's going on there. When a car's beeping you, it's time out, because it's trying to tell you, take your mind off it. We're back. I realised what's gone on. Well, I was going nowhere with that one, and I nearly broke my peg. It's because I drilled 2 holes from the other side. So as one was coming out, I went in at an angle, and instead of going through the one that was coming out, I started digging another hole. So let's try and correct it. Voila! That was a simple solution, but I had to stop to find the solution. I had to stop, go over there, and there was no car. And that tells you a lot, tells me a lot. just reminds me all the time that you can't do everything in one go. I just wanted to say that this project has been quite awe-inspiring. It's allowed me to dig out some old skills I used to have in woodworking, and allowed me to be able to use materials which would normally just go to waste or back of someone's farm, or back of someone's garage. And that's the joy of it all. It's the fact that it's not so much feeling guilty about wasting good workmanship, because this I'm actually building using the old material from a yurt, and there was certainly good workmanship that went into it before it all started to rot. But certainly it's not for that guilt, it's rather for the opportunity to be creative. And I don't know my match. You just throw something at me and I will look at it, and then all of a sudden that unconscious seed surfaces in my conscious mind and I find a use for it. And it's amazing how I can wait for 1 week, 1 year, 10 years, and all of a sudden something just fits like a puzzle piece, you know? And that's the joy of permaculture, but it's also the joy of being conscious of your own personal development. And you should be. If you're not, then they're just going to dictate something and stuff it down your throat. And then you may regret that one day in the future when you have to unlearn yourself. So as a spiritual anarchist, I'm building something here, and I always give the opportunity to other people to get involved. And if you're not here and you really want to be here, then you should be doing something about it. So it's a wake-up call for those people who are really repressed, procrastinate quite a lot. There are lots of projects like this around the world, and certainly in even in your home countries, you can find a multitude of creative projects where you can just be social, get funky, learn something, share your skills, and get free psychotherapy, basically, because it really does work.